Hello, Dmitry. How are you doing?
Hi. Thanks. I'm doing fine. How are you?
Everything is great. Where are you right now?
Well, now I'm at home in Frankfurt am Main. Um, we recently moved to a wonderful apartment with high ceilings, with a lot of lights, and I also recently got this wonderful instrument that you see.
Would you mind if at first we will start talking about your wonderful instrument and then about your fascinating career?
Of course, with pleasure.
Please tell us everything about this instrument. And I need to mention that if some of my questions will sound simple, we are doing this for people who maybe not professionally trained, but yet very passionate about classical music, and we want them to get to know more exciting things about classical music. So please
Yeah.
tell us everything. We want to know everything about this instrument.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm also very passionate about classical music, so we're kind of on the same wave. Um, so this instrument, the only sad thing that it doesn't belong to me, but it was a great privilege. It was given to me for a year or so, and it's now in my apartment, and I'm allowed to play on it every day. And this is something really fascinating because before I lived in quite a tiny apartment and I had only a digital piano, which is okay to practice on it. But if you just play and want to do something with sound and with your imagination, of course, it's impossible. And this instrument, it's a wonder in many ways. First of all, it's original from 1802. Um, the guy who built it, his name was Johann Evangelist Schmidt. He was pupil of very famous piano master Stein. We meet this name Stein in a lot in letters of Mozart. And Schmidt was also very loved among the family members of Mozart. For example, his sister owned this instrument and this kind of instrument, and his father too. So it's a beautiful example of early Viennese piano. Um, and what is extremely special about it is that it has really very rounded and very singing sound. Usually, not always, but usually, if you play these older Viennese pianos, originals, they might sound a little bit more direction harpsichord
Mhm.
with more, articulated and maybe a sharp sound. But this one is really the wonderful exception. I mean, both aesthetics are great and I love both, but this one is just closer to my own perception.
Mhm. Uh, to your opinion, who from the composers of the past may have played on similar instruments?
Well, it's just very well known who was it. I mean, it was Mozart himself, um, who of course played harpsichord and clavichord when he was a child, but then he completely switched to fortepiano. And this kind of modus was always this kind of fortepiano model was always in his concerts and in his apartments.
Mhm.
Then, of course, Joseph Haydn, uh, of course, Beethoven. Beethoven, um, his music experienced evolution together with the evolution of the instruments, but his earlier piano sonatas and piano concertos uh, were played on something like this. I would say even until the famous Waldstein sonata,
Mhm.
uh, you can play everything here. Yeah.
Now, speaking of mechanics, how different it is comparing to the modern instrument and maybe comparing to harpsichords.
unfortunately, I'm not so prepared to tell you English terms of this Viennese action, so to say. But I can tell you my feelings as pianist and how it functions. Well, the mechanics of it is extremely light. So basically, you just do and it sounds already. And one point is, of course, it allows to play you much faster and much more articulated. Not only because of the lightness of the keys, but also because the strings are shorter and the sound is much shorter and more pronounced than on modern pianos. But the downside, of course, it's not a downside, it's just a certain difficulty or certain challenge with these instruments that you have to control your fingers in absolutely perfect way. So the weight of your finger, how it goes to the key, how it feels the deepness of the key. But in order to control it, your fingers, they should be really well prepared, and you should feel everything with the tips of your fingers. So it's kind of a completely different technique from the one that we know with the modern pianos, where we basically use our whole body, engage our whole body to produce the sound. So here, everything is basically on the fingertips.
On the fingertips. I was actually about to ask you if you can recall your first impressions when you tried playing on pianoforte for the first time.
Yes, I recall it actually quite well. My first fortepiano, it's okay if I call it fortepiano. I just, I don't know, there are so many international terms for it, but anyway, it was a much later instrument, and it was also an original from 1835, also with Viennese action, but of course much bigger, little bit heavier, the keys, but of course not as heavy as on modern piano. And it was from a piano master who lived in Munich, Alois Bieber. And that was the instrument that I studied then when I entered the Hochschule, the university in Frankfurt. And I remember that my first impression was I thought that the sound was quite pale and I could not really get anything from this instrument. I can't say that I did not like it, but I just did not understand. And of course, the reason was that I was like a normal modern pianist with modern approach, with modern kind of education. And afterwards, when I entered the class of my teacher and studied for 4 years these instruments, I think it took me maybe 1.5 or 2 years just to adapt my physique, just to adapt my body and my hearing as well to these instruments. And then when it happened, I just could not imagine anything else. No.
What made you to switch from modern piano to historical instruments?
Well, I can't say that I completely switched from modern to historic. I still play, of course, less concerts on a modern piano. But I mean, first of all, not all concert halls can rent the piano, the forte piano, or own a period piano. And then, of course, there are composers that I love so much, and I just cannot, refuse playing them, like Mettner or Rachmaninoff or Scriabin or Ravel, or even Brahms. Brahms you can play on an earlier fortepianos, but still, this one would be, for example, too early.
I have a quick question from my student who asked me. He asked me actually two questions. He asked me whether historical instruments are to be made today, and he also asked me questions which I had no idea what to answer. How many of those are made per year? If it's difficult to get one.
Yes, it's a good question. Well, the second question, I'm not aware of statistics, so I don't know how many instruments are produced. The only thing is that there are no like fabrics, or there are no like bigger institutions that build this kind of instruments. There are quite a few enthusiasts, piano masters and piano restorers who also
Excuse me, даже у меня свет почему-то погас. Можешь проверить? Извини, пожалуйста, Дим, сейчас, секундочку. Ну, извините, такое у меня в первый раз.
Ничего, что я поменял позу немножко.
So I'm not aware of how many copies of period instruments are built in a year. But one I can tell you that that's are not like big fabrics or some huge institutions that, you know, produce copies. There are quite a few enthusiasts, piano makers and piano restorers who also make this kind of beautiful copies. And I know that usually they have quite a small workshop, maybe 3 or 4 people working together. So maybe to build one instrument, they need like a year or so. And that's why it's actually a very paradoxical situation, because the copies are sometimes more expensive than the original instruments. Yeah, just because they're built by a few people.
Yeah.
And they just
labor.
Yeah. They just put a lot of time in it.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is that we still can order. We still can have some historical instruments or copies of famous instruments of the past, and it's always handmade.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe it's a good idea to mention how many types of fortepiano we have, and tell us more about Viennese type, why it's called Viennese. Also, a question from my student.
Well, how many types? It depends on the time we're talking about. I mean, we know that fortepiano as instrument was invented by an Italian guy, Bartolomeo Cristofori. And then the German guy, Silbermann, was fascinated by this fortepiano, and he made his copy. So they did copies even then in the 18th century with some improvements. And then if we're talking about Viennese pianos, we're talking about a very special action, Viennese action. We call it Viennese just because Vienna back then was one of the great capitals of art. So basically, all the people, not only composers but also piano makers, were going to Vienna and trying to achieve something there. Practically at the same time, little bit later, one of the centers of piano making was also in London. I mean, it's all international because it doesn't have to do with nationality of piano makers. For example, in London, someone like Clementi, whom we know as a pianist and composer, but he also built pianos. And then his pianos have this English action, which differs a bit and produces another type of sound and feels a little bit differently than the Viennese one.
But for you, as for a performer, to adapt for a new action, is it a big deal?
Well, now it's much easier. Of course, when I began studying on these instruments, I concentrated my time a lot around period pianos. And then, for example, when I had to play on a modern piano, then it was a bit more difficult to adapt. But probably it was even more problematic to go back from the modern to the period piano, because on one hand, with period piano, you have to reduce everything. You have to reduce influence of your body on the performance. And on the other hand, in order to control everything and to produce nice sound, you have to be completely relaxed. So you think that if you're tense, then you can maybe do a more precise job, but it's not.
Not the case.
It's not the case. That's true. So with period pianos, you have to be almost like a Tai Chi master, completely relaxed and letting this energy flows, flowing through you.
So basically, you are building up the tension of the phrase in your head, and then just you imagine this, and then you build it up through absolutely relaxed hands.
Absolutely. Of course, fingers should be pointed. Yeah, but basically you're right. It's only about connection between your ear and fingers, and everything here should be completely relaxed.
But Russians never had the problem with fingertips.
Maybe just because we start early, but still, for me, it took a great deal of time to reduce this, physical tension, and also to get rid of this, whole body performing with you that we used to do on modern instruments.
Would you be so kind to let us hear a little excerpt of this beautiful instrument beside you?
Well, I'll try to. First,
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me demonstrate maybe something different, because I think I messed up with harmonies.
Feel free.
Maybe this one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You so much. Lovely. I want you to tell us about your memories about competitions that you attended on historical instruments in Warsaw and in Germany. How different it was, because I know that you participated in some competitions on modern instruments as well, and pretty successfully. How different it was for you to try something new in your musical life?
I must say that was very different. Basically, there were two competitions on period pianos that I participated in. And first one was the Chopin competition. It was the first Chopin competition on period pianos in Warsaw. And I was just so lucky because it was the end of my master studies on these period pianos. And then they just announced that there will be this competition. And of course, I started preparing since not only period instruments, but Chopin is also a very meaningful name for me. And with the Chopin competition, it was for me more like a festival because in our Hochschule in Frankfurt, where I studied, we had only this romantic instrument, a Viennese instrument from 1835. And then we had a copy of an early Viennese instrument by Walter or Walter, sorry. There is no English pronunciation of these names. Walter, who was a very famous piano maker, and Mozart loved his pianos very much. And apart from that, I never tried many instruments to this point. And then when I went to Warsaw, I think we had around 14 different instruments. Five of them were on stage, so we could choose for our performances on stage. And the rest, 9, they were in the rooms, in the practice rooms for us to practice. And some of the instruments were like exceptionally good. For example, one that I played throughout the whole competition was the original Pleyel piano restored by wonderful and very famous piano restorer Edwin Bönk in Holland. And another one, an earlier fortepiano, it was a copy of a Warsaw piano Buchholz. On this piano, Chopin, for example, premiered his piano concerti. It was also a piano with Viennese action. As you see, we have someone from Warsaw, piano maker, but he's building pianos with Viennese action. And this copy, excellent copy, was made by Paul McNulty, who is probably one of the most famous piano makers of our time. And later, I came back to this piano a lot when I played recitals in Warsaw. For example, 2 or 3 years after the competition, I played the Abele variations on this Buchholz. And also last year, I did something on this instrument. Anyway, it just felt for me like discovering the whole new world with all these instruments. And then just the fact that I was allowed to go through the all stages and in the final to play with this amazing orchestra, which was the orchestra of the 18th century, created by Franz Bruggen. It was nothing but like celebration of music for me. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, you played F minor concerto.
Yes, I played F minor concerto. That's right. I must mention that my huge love for Chopin began actually with E minor. I think I was 11 or 12, and then my mom bought a CD with Stanislav Bunin. He's one of Chopin competition winners. And I remember listening to this maybe 2 or 3 times a day. I was so crazy about this music. And then afterwards, I somehow, without Amazon and internet, I found the letters of Chopin and in Russian, of course, Russian translation. And then that became my most important book. I don't know how many times I read it through. But anyway, later I just chose the F minor because I don't know, it changes. It's like a season. It's season of F minor and then season of E minor. But back then I remember that F minor was speaking to my soul, and I really wanted to play it.
Yeah, interestingly, I find this concerto very very touching. I know that Kissin is not particularly happy about the first movement. He calls this not very good music, but I totally disagree with this statement. I think it's fantastic concerto, and it's very intimate, and it's very touching, and it's just not a concerto that you can rely on only on your brilliance. It needs something else. It needs sensitivity. So I like your recording. And by the way, thank you so much for your recent album release, which is Chopin latest works. It's great. Thank you. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I have a question. There's a particular reason why I really wanted to make this conversation with you, even before we joined Chopin Society, Vancouver Chopin Society, because I always was fascinated by your ability to not follow well-known cliches. So you're great at avoiding cliches, and I love it. I would like to ask a few questions about your interpretations, and then we will proceed to more tricky section of me asking you what you think about modern pianism and in general direction where it all goes. But let's begin with your interpretations, because you without any hesitation, you are adding ornaments, you're preluding, improvising before the actual piece. Tell me how you got to know about this kind of style, because we both came from Moscow, and we know that Moscow is a capital of standardized type of thinking and playing, which is a good thing if you have a chance to study somewhere else. But sometimes it's an obstacle for a musician to be fully open-minded. Tell me your journey with improvisation, preluding, and when did you start doing this, and what encouraged you to start?
If you allow me, it's just stuck with me this comment of Kissin. I never heard it, but of course I believe you that he said it maybe at some point, and maybe at some point he changed his mind. But with the second piano concerto, I mean, we all know that it was written before the first one, right?
Yes.
It was basically his first piano concerto. And the older I get, the more I'm amazed when I listen to this concerto, or when I get to play it. It's just a wonder. If you think about an 18 years old composer who brought to light something that never existed before him. I mean, this kind of piano technique, this kind of harmonization, this kind of sensitivity. I mean, of course, we have someone like Hummel, who is also one of my favorite composers, and his piano concertos could be compared at some way with Chopin's piano concertos. But still, I mean, if you think about this 18 years old boy who actually learned piano with a professional only 6 years of his life, with his Wojciech Szywny, right? Who was not a pianist himself. I mean, he was Kapellmeister, he was violin player. He played piano, of course, but he was not a professional pianist in the most serious sense of this word. And when Chopin entered the conservatory in Warsaw, he never studied piano. He studied composition. He learned counterpoint, harmony, and many other things, but never piano. So basically, he was self-didact who invented a completely new piano style, which influenced the whole piano music after him. And the F minor concerto, I think, is one of the very first huge gems of this and wonders of this new piano style. And each movement, and of course for me especially the first one, is the reflection of this new era. And now returning to your question about my journey with preluding and improvisation and so on. Well, first of all, in Moscow, I would not generalize. Of course, the image that we have is like you described it, that it's very much standardized and competition oriented, I would say, kind of education, which probably at some point also not so bad, but there were and there are some exceptions. For example, even with period instrument, unfortunately, I never had anything to do with him, but you know, of course, Alexei Lyubimov.
Lyubimov, absolutely.
Yeah, who started this whole movement in Russia with period instrument and also with modern music. That is actually quite interesting. That only in the conservatory in Moscow, they combined these two absolutely absolutely different direction in one study. So if you study early music with harpsichord and fortepiano, you have at the same time to play the most modern music. And maybe that was also why I did not do it, because I'm this modern language, I also don't want to generalize, but it's not my cup of tea, I must say. Yeah. So the journey was that I was a normal piano student in Moscow, and I finished a master, and I wanted to go to Germany to do another master, also with modern piano. And the only experience with old instruments I had were recordings. I knew, for example, recordings of Freiburger Baroque Orchestra or orchestra of the 18th century. Or Christian Bezuidenhout, or Andreas Steyer, Lyubimov. And some of them I liked very much, but I never thought myself that I would start with period instruments. And then I went to Germany, and a friend of mine who already lived here for some years, he said that, oh, you know, there is a wonderful teacher. He's coming right now from Basel to teach in Frankfurt, and especially for him, they bought a nice fortepiano, this romantic Viennese from 1835, and you should just go and play for him and see what happens. And then we're coming back to my first experience with fortepiano, which I cannot say that it was negative. I just didn't understand what to think about it. But then the teacher, whose name is Jesper Christensen, and with whom I spent 4 years studying fortepiano, he invited me to a seminar which he gave for the students of the old music department. And in this seminar, we listened to an old recording, which I knew before, by the way. It was recording made by Sergei Taneyev, who is maybe not so well known in Europe and in Canada and the States, but in Russia, of course, he's a major figure as a pupil of Tchaikovsky, as wonderful composer himself, as a great pianist, and also for some years director of the conservatory, right? And funny enough, but Sergei Taneyev made one of the very first acoustic recordings in the world. It was in 1891, and it was made with this invented by Edison cylinders. And also funny enough that for this recording, he chose not very well known and not finished Fantasy by Mozart, the C minor, which sounds So it's only 3 minutes of music, and the seminar lasted for 2 hours, and we listened and listened to this recording, and we discussed what exactly Taneyev did to achieve this incredible level of expression and of precision, and how it goes together with the written sources and quotes that Christensen back then provided from the written sources of the 18th and 19th century. And in the end, all of us tried to imitate everything that he did. And I mean, it was articulation, it was agogic, because he plays agogically very free, but also in a very logical and precise way. So it doesn't give you an impression that it's somehow uncontrollable. Yeah. And actually, after this seminar, I decided that I should study with Jesper Christensen. And as I said you before, the love for the instruments, it came maybe a year or 2 years later, when I spent enough time, to adapt my hearing, my physique, and my technique for the instruments. And of course, preluding and improvising was a huge part of this style in general. We know it from the Baroque times throughout the classical era and then Romantic pianists, that all of them were great improvisers. And these improvisations, they had like both practical and aesthetical side or function, I would say. That means, I mean, practical side is clear. Sometimes you just go into a living room and you haven't played this instrument before, and you could imagine in the 18th or 19th century it wasn't very warm, maybe in the winter. So you need to warm up your hands. And then you play some sequence of chords, and of course you cannot play just anything. It should be in the key of the piece that comes after that, and it should be also somehow beautiful, That's the first thing. And then the aesthetical side of it was very well expressed by Franz Liszt. One might think that this tradition went away in the end of the 19th century, but from the quote of Franz Liszt, we know that it continued. When he was teaching, he had this wonderful piano class in Weimar, in Germany, and many students come to play for him. And one of them just went straight to the piano and started a sonata by Mozart. And Liszt interrupted him immediately, and he said, No, you have to introduce us to the world of Mozart first, and then start playing. Yeah. So it was somehow like tuning, the audience and yourself also as performer, not to begin with the first note of the piece, but just to prepare emotionally, maybe spiritually, the public to the piece which is going to sound. And of course, with some pieces we already have like introductions. I'm thinking straight about the first ballad by Chopin. Yeah. I don't think that I would play any improvisation before, because there is an introduction already built in. Yeah. But with some pieces, it's just different. And then one thing is improvising before the piece, but also there is something like improvising between the pieces. And this is also some kind of, it's a different way of expressing yourself. Again, the practical reason was, I mean, nowadays we know all the modern music and we constantly surrounded by noises. Yeah. And I think that we are not as sensitive now, both as listeners and as players, than people in the 19th, 18th century. And back then they were very sensitive when a dissonance comes, in the music, or some, very tensed harmony, or some key which is very far from the key that you're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine that if you have some pieces, one of them, the first one in A major, the second one in E flat major, these keys are quite distant, right? And apparently for the listeners, it was aesthetically not possible, to have the E flat major piece straight after A major. You had to do some
bridging.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You had to create a bridge that would logically connect and prepare them for the next piece.
Logically and slowly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there are some wonderful examples of these bridges. We have, for example, something which was published under the title Capriccio by Mozart. This is not a piece that you're supposed to play in a concert, although I'm sure that there are some pianists that play it in the concerts. The story of it was that the sister of Mozart, Nannerl, she received equal practical education. So she could play piano and violin very well. But unfortunately, she did not receive the theoretical education. Because, back then it was different. And so as a woman, she was not allowed to receive this kind of knowledge or, which of course is terrible.
It's terrible, and we know similar story about Fanny Mendelssohn, who had to publish her works under name of her brother, because she was not allowed to ask for publishing this.
With Fanny Mendelssohn, by the way, we have a little bit of progress because she received an absolutely equal education with her brother.
Yes.
And she could compose very well. I mean, she was a genius composer. For me, one of the greatest of Romantic era. But yes, the father said that composing should be like a little ornament in her life, but her duty is to be good mother and good wife. So basically, the Nannerl, who could not really improvise, she asked Mozart to prepare for her these certain modulating preludes from C major, for example, to B flat major, then from one key to another key. And he did it for her. So she prepared it and used it in her concerts.
It's wonderful. Such a loving brother, right?
Absolutely.
It's helpful. I was going to ask you about if you familiar with the Czerny Opus 200, which is dedicated. I was going to ask if you use this in work with your students, because now I know that you just joined the university in Köln, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So how do you teach your students? How do you help them to prepare for entering this world of improvisation?
Well, there is a certain amount of sources, and you just mentioned Opus 200, and then there is another source, another treatise by Czerny. I think there is the art of improvisation and then the art of preluding, right? There are two different books, and of course I recommend them to find their inspiration with these books. Then there is a wonderful source which is probably not so widely known, preludes written down by Clara Schumann for her pupils, in order also to practice this thing. And this is really incredible because these preludes, they just, some of them are like Czerny, so there's basically some passages and some harmonies, and then there is a full cadence in the end, and then you're entering the piece. But some of them are composed for some concrete pieces by her husband. For example, we have Aufschwung by Schumann, yeah. And Clara Schumann, she just takes a motif and the rhythm and creates a wonderful little prelude which goes straight into the piece. Yeah. So it also gives us this impression that it wasn't only like improvising or playing some chords in general. You could also prepare the piece by taking its motifs or taking some, rhythmical structure of it. There are also wonderful 24 preludes by Hummel. And I must say that there are pianists that also play them as a cycle. But I'm afraid it's not a cycle. It's just preludes like in Czerny source that should prevail or prepare a piece coming in a certain key. Those preludes are maybe like 8 or maximum 16 bars long, and the function of them are just clear, that they're not the pieces on them or on their own, but they're just for something which is coming.
How do you think? Should one have a composing talent to be able to improvise, or it's just a matter of education and improvising techniques?
Well, it's difficult to answer because first of all, also in order to improvise, you need to want it. And I know some of my colleagues who does it and who does it wonderfully, but the thing is that many people think that this practice is old and it should be connected to the period instrument. So if you're using a modern piano, so you're not allowed to improvise, because also it belongs to a smaller rooms. It just doesn't sound well in a big concert hall on a big piano. With that, I don't agree quite. I mean, we still know some of recordings, for example, by Joseph Hoffmann or by Dino Lipatti, where they do these preludes and not only improvisations before the pieces, but also these modulations between the distant keys. And it's funny enough that there is this wonderful recital by Dino Lipatti, which was the last concert in his life, 3 months before his death. And he played a great program with the first partita by Bach. Then there was A minor sonata by Mozart. And then 2 impromptus by Schubert, and then some waltzes by Chopin. And I remember when I first got this recording, I was very young, and of course, it was completely cleaned from all these little things that he was doing in the concert. But then later on YouTube, they published the whole thing. And then you can actually listen to his improvisations from one piece to another piece. These bridges, as you said. Yeah.
I asked about composing because Little Bird told me that someone composed a sonata, the funeral march, at the age of 13.
Yeah. I mean, I actually remember how I composed my very first piece, and I remember this piece also very well. It was a waltz, and I think I was 7, and I just got up early to go to school around 7 o'clock, something like this, and I just went to piano, and it started, flowing. And then my piano teacher noticed it, and she introduced me to a composition teacher. So I had also a composition teacher in the school. And then I composed several sorted pieces. And then I got to know the wonderful world of Chopin's music. And of course, I was so impressed by it. I was breathing his music back then, and then my compositions they became a little bit larger, not only a little waltz or little minuet, but the whole sonata. But actually, it was a sonata with two movements. So there was like allegro, and then a funeral march. Which is very pessimistic, but it reflects also very well, the teenager years of mine.
Yeah. You're around 13 years old, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe it was era before iPads.
Oh yes, it was before iPads. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't avoid this question because I need to ask you. What do you think about how should I put this? When we listen to Chopin Competition on historical instruments or period instruments and on the modern instruments, I would say to my taste, we are hearing totally different music. And not only due to difference in instruments, but in general, the interpretation, the style, the dignity that stays behind. I was wondering, how do you distinguish differences between those two events, those two competitions? What do you think?
In order to answer it, I just need to compare them straight one next to each other. And I wasn't quite a listener, quite a follower of Chopin competitions in the recent years. Of course, I listened to some of the musicians, but generally I just didn't have enough time. I had something on my own, like concerts or teaching. But I'll try to answer your question. I think that the fact that they created this competition on period instruments is something which influences now modern pianists as well. And with some of them, you can actually hear this kind of agogic freedom, or maybe one or two extra ornaments that they use in their playing. But I think the difference is not between instruments, but between just different approaches. And I'm not going to sound critical because I have respect for both directions, but I just know there are people who just practice 12 hours a day, and I cannot do it, for example, and I think it's my weak side. But if you're living this kind of life, that you just don't notice anything else around, And in order to play music, and especially this kind of music, which is full of senses, of feelings, of different emotions, but which is also very intellectual. I think Chopin was extremely intellectual in his compositions and a very perfectionist. Anyway, in order to understand them and then to perform them, you need to know life, you need to know feelings. This is the same that we know, like great actors, in order to play a role, they prepare for years and they put themselves into certain circumstances, and they try to live it from inside, And the same with music. Of course, sometimes you have, for example, the second sonata by Chopin with funeral march, or something like with crazy, desperate feelings. And it's not always that you experience this yourself, before you're playing this music. And of course, I don't wish anyone, to experience something that Chopin experienced in his life in order to compose this music. But at least we could take it from the actors, because you know this famous Stanislavski school, yeah, to put yourself in the circumstances, to imagine how it could be. You know, sometimes actors, they play bad persons, you know, murderers or something like this, but it doesn't mean that they have to be, you know, killers in order to play something like this. Anyway, this is for me an extremely important approach. And someone like Chopin would tell you the same. For example, he told his pupils that if you practice more than 3 hours a day, uh, he said it quite directly. He said that you become stupid. Yeah. I don't quite agree, because next to Chopin, we know Liszt, right? Who, as a young person, he practiced maybe 12 hours a day, but he managed to be one of the most well-educated and cultured people of his time. But I think Chopin just meant this kind of approach where you're only practicing and you don't have interest for anything in your life. So Chopin advised his pupil to go to the theater, to go to the opera, to go to have a walk, just to be, you know, on your own with your ideas, and to take inspiration from the real world. Yeah. So I think the difference is this one.
Do you listen yourself to modern pianists, or you prefer historical instruments?
Well, there are no such many pianists who play on historical instruments. I think in the end, the most important for me is not the instrument, but the way of playing, the way of performing. I started talking about beginnings of my education with this recording by Taneyev, right? And for me, maybe the most important and influential names in the history of pianism, they lie in this time, you know, between the end of the 19th century and maybe the middle of the 20th century. So they all, you cannot say that they all play similarly. They're all quite different individuals. We have someone like four great grand pupils by Chopin: Raoul Kochalski, Alexander Michalovsky, Raoul Pugnot, and Moritz Rosenthal, who actually also studied with Liszt. We have wonderful and almost not known pupils of Clara Schumann, wonderful ladies, someone like Ilona Eibenschutz or Maria Baumeier, amazing pianists. And they all left recordings. We have Theodor Leshetitsky, this great piano teacher who educated the generation of great pianists like Ignaz Friedman or Benno Moisevich. We have Rachmaninoff, who is, for me, one of the gods of pianism. We have someone like Alfred Grünfeld, who is not very well known nowadays. We know only some arrangements that he made to the waltzes of Strauss. He was pupil of Kulak, and at the beginning of the century, of the 20th century, he made a few recordings, and they're just the best that you can listen to, for me, for my taste. Flumerlied by Schumann, or how do you say it, Bird as Prophet, right? From Waldszenen, also by Schumann. It's just so amazing. Or Scriabin playing himself, or Grieg playing himself. So, and they all play modern instruments. They didn't have anything to do with pianos, but their aesthetic and their understanding of sound, of articulation, of flexibility, of agogic, of pedaling, which is also very important with the historical, you know, understanding. This understanding lies in the tradition of the 19th and 18th century, because they all studied with the people who created this tradition.
Thank you for mentioning pedaling. I actually was going to ask you. It's another question from one of my students who came for class, the very radical idea to follow all the pedaling strictly how it's written in Chopin's scores. And I had to warn him that it might not take the same effect as it sounds on Pleyel. So maybe you can shed more light on this, how modern pianists should approach pedaling in music by Chopin.
Well, you're absolutely right. If you play it completely without pedal on a modern piano, it would sound quite differently and very dry.
Mhm.
With Chopin, I'm quite convinced that the amount of pedal he put down into the score is something that he meant. So there is no pedal, more pedal than he just wrote down into his score. He was, as I mentioned before, he was a perfectionist. And in some of his manuscripts, you can also follow his work, how he worked with pedal. And very interesting that he was always adding more, not reducing, but adding more. But still, this adding more is not the way that we as modern pianists use it nowadays. The thing is that back then, the right pedal was not the tool to connect notes with each other. It was some kind of very special color, because we have this kind of music, even Chopin, is much closer to Baroque music and to harpsichord than to us, yeah. And this kind of understanding that you put some kind of register, that you turn on the register on a harpsichord or on organ, and you have a completely different sound. You can still follow it in Mozart's, Beethoven's music, and Schubert's music, but also in Chopin. Of course, Chopin uses pedal in much more, wide way. And I think it's very interesting that we don't try, we just approach the pieces also with some things that we heard before and with some concepts and ideas that we have, and we don't actually see what stays in the score. I have this example, the B flat minor prelude by Chopin. This one. Impossible to to play it here because the keyboard is too short. Anyway, Chopin puts a pedal, I think, for 8 first bars. Well, as long as we have this B flat minor harmony, it's on the one pedal. And then with the change of harmony, he changes the pedal. And how many recordings of modern pianists that play it like this? So I think it also goes the different direction. We put pedal everywhere where it's not there, and we don't use pedal where Chopin wrote it down and where he meant it.
I believe if modern pianists had more chances, more opportunities to explore possibilities of historical instrument, that would really help a lot. I remember my experience when I tried to play Bach music on harpsichord for the first time back in Moscow, and I was shocked. I realized that with my modern approach, I could not manage to get anything properly. So yeah, I think that this is one of the maybe challenge for modern musician, and we only could wish them to have. I'm planning to buy a clavichord. Maybe I will ask for your advice when we will be in Germany next year. Do you have other instruments or just this fortepiano?
So now I just have this fortepiano, but for some time, for 2 years, I have clavichord. It was also some kind of scholarship that was given to me. So I played clavichord at home as well. And I love this instrument very much.
Yeah. How these instruments, when you say that it was lended to you for the period of time of 1 year, how it happens? Is a foundation that owns the instrument and then they provide you with this instrument, or how usually works?
Well, in case of clavichord, it is German Clavichord Society, and they have this scholarship, and basically you just need to write a motivation, a letter of motivation, and probably to get a recommendation from someone. And maybe you also have to study historical instruments. I'm not so sure. I don't remember the conditions. But in the case of clavichord, it was the organization. And with this instrument, it was just a goodwill of the piano maker who owns it. We're good friends, and he knows my feelings to this instrument, because before it I played concerts on this instrument, and I fell in love with this from the very first note. So there was a very special relation from the very beginning. Yeah. Allow me to say just one more thing about pedaling, because I was having this quote in my head. Playing on a modern piano, of course we have to adapt things, right? Because on Pleyel, we have this wonderful natural resonance. The sound is not just ending when you put your finger away from the key. Yeah, and the action of the modern piano is too perfect, because you put your finger and then there is nothing. Yeah, and then there is wonderful quote by Busoni. A pupil approached him with this question: if he's allowed to use pedal in Bach. And Busoni answered, yes, you are allowed, but nobody should notice it. So it sounds easy, but it's not so easy to do, no?
Yeah, I prefer in my class it's mandatory to manage polyphony that Bach's obliges us to do fingers only. I allow them to use pedal if it's musically reasonable, which in Bach very often it's not. So most of my students playing Bach with no pedal.
I mean, in my class it's the same. I also think that there is a greater problem behind it, because we don't take time to experiment, and to try out things. I don't know what is the reason of it. Maybe because we're all like having only one version that we should prepare for a concert and then later for a CD recording. So we don't have time, or maybe, I don't know, we don't have an intention to try out different versions. For example, in the case of Chopin, we can try out with this pedal and then try out reducing a little bit, or try out adding a little bit. I remember this wonderful story about Sofronitsky, who is also maybe not very well known in the Western world, because he was only, with a few exceptions, he was only giving concerts in the Soviet Union. But in my opinion, he was one of the greatest pianists of his time.
One of my piano gods.
Yes. I share this admiration. So the story is that he played a concert, and then after the concert, a lady approached him, and she wanted to compliment him, and she said, you played as if you were improvising. And imagine, he was insulted by this. He said that for each piece, he has at least 6 different versions. The versions with the version with 3, but I heard it with 6. Yeah. And then depending on the acoustics, on the instrument, or on his own mood, and so on, he just chooses one of these versions. And I think this is a wonderful approach. I mean, of course, sometimes you have inspiration and you relaxed enough to try out new things on the stage, but sometimes you just have to do something because you don't have energy, and you did not eat well. And for that kind of cases,
For
you
that
have
case.
yeah.
Speaking of Sofronitsky, when I was a teenager and my teacher asked me to listen, actually he invited me to his place, Mikhail Karpov. He's a grandson of Natalia Sats.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
The children theater, right?
For the children theater, musical theater of Natalia Sats in the center, almost in the center of Moscow. And Prokofiev wrote for Peter and the Wolf for her, by her request. So it's a fantastic dynasty, and he's an extremely cultural man. And he invited me to just let me to listen Sofronitsky recording of Schumann Papillons. And we also did quite a similar thing what you did in Frankfurt by discussing, deconstructing, and that was fascinating the amount of details. So to mention, Sofronitsky was really true perfectionist. Is true. So that story about him feeling that he improvised, and when he said that, yes, but I work on a few interpretations, and then the only improvisation is that I pick one of the way last moment. And you're right. It's very, very. It shows both like admiration to the work and respect to the details that composer want you to achieve, but leaving yourself a little bit of space for spontaneous decision. Since we started to talk about our favorite pianists, why don't you name? You already did a quite impressive name dropping, so I will have a difficult time finding pictures of all of this because some of them don't have pictures, which I usually do. But could you please maybe state several recordings that spoke to you? Maybe mention a few artists, because we record this podcast for younger generations or for classical music lovers, and I want them to follow your recommendations and listen and maybe get something from it as well. Please name your favorite recordings or musicians.
Of course, with pleasure. Well, to be fair, I also need to name some living pianists which I admire, and one of them is of course Mikhail Pletnev, or Mikhail Pletnev, as they say in English. The thing is that I went to the Central Music School in Moscow, and I took piano lessons with Kira Shashkina, who was the first teacher of Pletnev in Kazan. And of course, there was some kind of cult of Pletnev in our class back then. But it stayed with me not only because we listened to it a lot, but just, I mean, he's one of the most amazing musicians of our time. And I think he's one of the few musicians who exists in this world of old masters, and in this language of old masters. He said himself many times that his favorite pianist is Rachmaninoff, and you can hear in some of his recording that he intentionally imitates Rachmaninoff, especially when he plays a piece by Rachmaninoff. And I also think it's a wonderful thing to do. If you're learning a language, you're allowed to imitate your teacher. No? So Pletnev influenced me very much. And when we are coming back to the old masters, I already mentioned Alfred Grünfeld with Schlummerlied by Schumann. Then there would be Moritz Rosenthal, who combined in his playing two greatest piano schools of the 19th century, Chopin and Liszt. And Rosenthal was a very, very interesting personality. For example, he was a professional sportsman and he was a very strong man. And he I think he did swimming professionally as well. Anyway,
It's like
he had
Lev Vlasenko.
What did Vlasenko do? I didn't know.
Also, he was doing sport, and there is a photo somewhere out there of him being in excellent condition. You know, I think it's swimming as well, or it was athletics or something like this. But yeah, I just remember this photo that I've seen. Please continue. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, Plitnov is, by the way, a professional pilot, and not only planes but also helicopters, as far as I know. Anyway, Rosenthal had a nickname, the King of Walls, because apparently he was one who really felt and understood this rhythm of and pulse of walls. So I would certainly recommend his recording of C-sharp minor Waltz by Chopin, Opus 64, number 2. There is a wonderful recording of his with the G sharp minor etude by Chopin, the 3rd etude. Many other recordings. I mean, with Rosenthal, you basically can listen to everything. Another grand pupil of Chopin, Raoul Kochalski, who also left a lot of recordings. And some of his Chopin recordings, for me, are just close to perfection. One of them is the most popular Nocturne, Opus 9, number 2, in E flat major, where he actually does some extra ornaments, which is very interesting.
So you do on your recording?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, thank you for noticing and for bringing it up. Yes. So with him, this Nocturne or D flat major Nocturne, Opus 27, or any other pieces, preludes by Chopin. He played not all the whole cycle, but he did a wonderful selection, and some of them are just great. The 1st and the 4th ballad, amazing with Raoul Kochalski. And just today, actually, I had a student who brought the E flat major Nocturne, but from Opus 55. Do you know this? And there is a recording of this Nocturne made by Ignaz Friedman, who was a great Polish pianist and pupil of Leschetizky. And I think this recording is probably one of the best things happened to Chopin in the era of recordings. And we listened to it together today. I mean, I've been knowing this recording for 20, maybe 25 years, but each time it just amazes me. This balance of everything and this absolutely natural flow and freedom and singing melody is just uncomparable.
He's a phenomenal.
He's absolutely phenomenal. Also, his mazurkas, also Songs Without Words by Mendelssohn, played by Friedman. Amazing.
Then you might like Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli. Do you know why I'm mentioning him?
No. Why?
Because he was passionate driver. He liked speed.
Of course, I mean,
same as you.
Yeah, and he was not only driver. I think he was actually a test pilot.
Exactly, pilot and
Ferrari.
Driver. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, he had a job in Ferrari, and Ferrari lended him new cars just to test them, or maybe to make some advertisements. So there are a lot of pictures with him.
Yes.
You know, with new Ferrari models.
Fascinating guy. Absolutely. I mean, his biography and his life and his approach to music and approach to, I wish we could make a podcast, you know, someday about Michelangeli.
And he's absolutely incredible.
And his live recording from Carnegie Hall. I don't remember the year. I think it was 1961 or something.
What did he play?
What's stuck to my ears, I will never forget this, is his Chaconne by Busoni.
Of course.
And that's absolutely incredible on any level, because he makes piano sound like organ. He makes piano sound like anything but piano. It's absolutely phenomenal playing, and his lifestyle. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just dropped one name for you, but I think you would agree, because he's a legend of piano
He's
playing.
absolutely a great legend, but he also lives this life. And you mentioned this passion for cars and for speed, something that I also have. I love cars, and I have a little sporty BMW coupe. And as you know, in Germany, you can drive pretty fast. So this is one of the greatest pleasures in my life.
Yes,
Yeah.
that we're gonna talk more when you will come to Vancouver. Yes, I'm really looking forward to hear you live here. I think it's a big event for all Vancouverans, and
Thanks.
when you will finish naming, if you have someone left, I will
Yes.
probably ask you to tell us about your upcoming program that you will be performing here, because I'm so excited to see that musicians are bringing music that is not known here. Nobody's playing Hummel around. Even his piano concerto that you mentioned before. I never heard in at least in BC. So I'm really looking forward to it. And let's finish with a few more names dropped, and then we'll proceed to your concert program.
Of course. Well, we talked already about Rachmaninoff, who is for me also one of the gods of pianism, and of course one of the most important composers. But as a pianist, practically everything that he recorded, especially if you take Chopin, for me it's six waltzes. It's just absolutely masterfully done. And I think how he combines the total simplicity with the finesse of everything is just amazing. Of course, he's playing of his own compositions, for instance, piano concerti. I remember there was an interview with Horowitz, and someone asked Horowitz which recording by Rachmaninoff comes close to his real sound. And he said it would be the second movement from the first piano concerto. And I totally agree. I mean, the first piano concerto he's recording, also with this incredible cadenza in the first movement, is something amazing. Also, the third piano concerto, when probably that's the piece that I mentioned the most frequent in my lessons. And first of all, the recording of Rachmaninoff with this piece, because when we're talking about phrasing, and I try to illustrate this type of romantic phrasing when you give the impulse at the beginning, and then you see how it kind of goes down and gets slower and quieter. The most perfect example, I know it sounds a little bit too abstract now, but the most perfect example is the second theme in the first movement of this concerto, how Rachmaninoff plays it. The problem for me with most of modern interpretations with this concerto, first of all, they're almost always way too slow compared to Rachmaninoff's own playing. And then if we take this second theme, the phrasing always goes to one. So it sounds. Yeah. And Rachmaninoff does a wonderful thing. He always puts an accent on the upbeat. And then towards the end of the theme, he slows down and gets quieter. So he plays. Yeah. And this is for me like the perfect example of romantic phrasing. But it's just subject on its own, of course.
On its own, yeah. I was wondering if you had a chance to listen to his recording that was recorded by Ormandy
Yes, the symphonic dances.
Yes, symphonic dances. It's fantastic seeing
It's
him.
phenomenal.
You know, I definitely admire his recordings, his professional recordings, but this one totally got me because when you see when apparently some people think that composers because they composing their music they can instantly play it, which is completely not true. We have to, even if we compose something, we have to get to practice to get this done, right?
Yeah.
And it's fantastic how he plays both parts he plays orchestral part and how it may be imperfect pianistically because it was not polished for the recording, but the way how he sings, how he shapes it, it's fantastic. This recording when it was released a couple years ago totally made our year. At the time we were working on these symphonic dances for two pianos, and
Yes, yeah.
it was a game changer because it's fascinating recording. Good. Who else?
Who else? So we mentioned Rachmaninoff, we mentioned Leschetizky school, we mentioned Clara Schumann,
Oh, she's
Chopin.
I can't stop thinking of her. Clara Schumann.
Incredible woman.
Incredible.
And actually here in Frankfurt is a very meaningful city for her because she started teaching here. So she had her piano class here. So with Clara Schumann, we have recordings of some of her pupils, which are quite incredible. So I would recommend, there is Ilona Eibenschutz, like EIB, who was a genius. But I think it was her own choice. She had a very promising career and she collaborated with famous conductors. I think she played with Furtwängler and so on. But then at some point she just married and she left career. And just later when she got older, she made some like home recordings of some pieces. Wonderful things with her is, for example, Schumann Romance in F sharp major. Then there is a wonderful audio interview with her where she talks about her time with Clara Schumann and her friendship with Brahms. They were really good friends, and I think Brahms chose her to play for her as a first person to hear to listen to it. His last piano opus was like opus 116, 17. Just in the room, they were just two, and he played it for her after composing. Then there is a pianist who had a greater career, who haven't stopped and who recorded quite a lot, which is Fanny Davis. And he recorded Piano Concerto by Schumann, and this is a really amazing recording. And also one thing that I love a lot with her is Kinderszenen by Schumann. Then I have to mention Maria Baumeier, who left only one recording, just like Taneyev, and the piece is not very well known. Of course, it's Schumann, but it's not very well known. It's a study in canon form, which Schumann composed for a pedal piano. But of course, it's possible to play on a normal piano without pedals. And she recorded this study in A flat major, which is just one of the most beautiful lyrical pieces by Schumann. So that would be also my recommendation to the students and younger pianists, just to get to know this great cycle. And this cycle, there are 6 studies in this cycle, and it was completely recorded by another modern pianist, whom I adore and like, and who is happened to be my good friend, is Piotr Anderszewski.
Yes.
And he recorded a wonderful CD with Schumann pieces, including these studies and Humoresque, and that would be also one of my recommendations. And then we need to mention some of Liszt pupils.
Mhm.
And also the names that are not very popular. But for example, Arthur Friedheim,
Mhm.
German pianist. Also the problem with these names and pianists that most of them got to record something when they were old, and some of the recordings are completely wonderful, but at some of the recordings you can just hear that they're a little bit out of shape just because of their age. But with Arthur Friedheim, there is an incredible recording of Feu Follet, of the Transcendent Etude by Liszt.
Yeah.
Then there is Frédéric Lamont, fantastic pianist, who also, like Ilona Ibenschutz, he did a wonderful audio memories about Liszt and his years in the Liszt class.
That's pretty solid. I would say it's a list of recordings for a good month or two for our listeners.
Well, maybe not, because mostly they're just very short pieces, and you can listen to them in one evening.
I know the speed. How in our school we have a music appreciation group on WhatsApp. So we just drop recordings frequently, and sometimes students are coming. They're so busy. They don't have time to really sit and enjoy. We're living in a world when one class ends and next starts right away, which is not good thing to my feeling. There should be little space for for thinking about what you just heard from this teacher, and then and for walk finally. But anyway,
and that's why I kind of take advantage of my students, because I'm also busy and I don't have much time to listen to it again, and then I just play it for my students, and then we discuss it together, and then I play it one more time.
Right. No, it makes great sense. No, I totally understand. Dmitry, would you be so kind to bring a brief overview on the program that you are planning to bring to Vancouver?
Of course, with pleasure. Well, this program is actually built up around the instrument that I'm going to play in Vancouver. When I learned that there would be a newly acquired wonderful copy of Graf made by Paul McNulty, and the original is from 1920, something like this. I was thinking that I should choose pieces that just fit or suit this instrument the best. And it also happened to be one of my favorite times in the music history, because it's just the beginnings of Romantic. In this time, like 20s, Chopin was young and composed his first opuses. Mendelssohn was young, Liszt. At the same time, to this time, we already had accomplished masters and great composers like Hummel or John Field, who already were known in the whole world of classical music. And they composed the greatest opuses around this time. And then, of course, Beethoven, who lived his last years on the earth and who achieved some kind of transcendental quality in his music, and also some kind gave some kind of direction, for the generation of Romantic composers to come. So the first piece would be Bagatelles of Beethoven, by Beethoven, Opus 126. 6 wonderful third pieces. Each of them is a gem, and not only content is romantic in this music, but also the form, because it was kind of untypical for a classical composer to concentrate their ideas in such small forms. So Bagatelle. Then I would perform an absolutely amazing piano sonata, number 1, Opus 6 by Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy, who composed it in the age of 16. And this sonata is just full of absolutely crazy ideas and innovations. When we take the first movement, he quotes Opus 101 by Beethoven, who was his idol, of course. And it's a very beautiful, almost like pastoral music. The most interesting movement is the third movement, which is recitativo, without bars. So it's absolutely ad libitum. But at the same time, it's a fugue. Could you imagine? So when you just look at the score, it looks like a modern piece. And musically, it works really fantastic. It's very, very beautiful and very experimental. And then at the beginning of the second part of the concert, I will play some nocturnes by John Field, who is considered an inventor of this genre for piano. Of course, we know, I think there is a nocturne by Mozart. Then there are some nocturnes by Beethoven. But in the romantic sense of this word, it was John Field who also influenced strongly Chopin with his nocturnes. And John Field composed, I think, 19 absolutely wonderful romantic nocturnes and 2 of them I will be performing. Funny thing that John Field, in the end of his life, he came to Moscow and he taught a generation of Moscow composers. For instance, Mikhail Glinka, who is considered the father of Russian classical music. And John Field died in Moscow, and his grave is also there. And then the climax of my program is piano sonata opus 81 in F sharp minor by Hummel, Johann Nepomuk Hummel. Hummel has become one of the most important names for me around 2 years ago when I first played his piano concerto with the wonderful Freiburger Baroque Orchestra. And then I so much fell in love with his music, basically with everything. I mean, for me now, Hummel is like a synonym of quality. So everything you can expect that it will be good, anything that he composed. And he combines this wonderful classical structure, which he still has in his music, with fantastic romantic ideas. And also his place in the history of music. Just imagine that when he was a young boy, 7 or 8, he took lessons with Mozart. Then he took over position of Haydn at Esterházy Palace. So Haydn adored him and he recommended him to Esterházy. Yeah. And then he lived long enough. He was also a friend of Beethoven. He taught Mendelssohn and both Fanny and Felix. And you can also see the evolution of his style. His early music, early pieces, they sound like Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven. And then his later pieces are just the great pieces of romantic music. And this sonata is considered one of his really greatest piano pieces. Schumann, I don't know how to translate it in English. German it was a ungeheures Werk eines Titans, like the greatest work of Titan. Or I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. And many romantic composers, Mendelssohn also admired this sonata, and it poses some technical difficulties. In general, this style of Hummel is very, very virtuosic. So almost in every of his pieces, you can you have parallel thirds, you have octaves, and you have absolutely crazy jumps overhand. With my girlfriend, we have this secret language. So when she asked me which piece I practiced, I show her, and that would be Hummel Sonata.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm so much looking forward to hear you here in Vancouver on March 29th. There's only one problem. I'm afraid I could not convince my students to play without the scores anymore, because as we know, you play from the scores. And here we have to encourage them to memorize, because when they're preparing for exams and competitions, memorization is required. So they will have very strong evidence telling me that, but Mr. Ablogin is not playing from memory, why I should. Anyway, we are really looking forward to see you here.
Thank you so much. As for the scores, there might be a surprise, because I think playing those crazy jumps is just it's just not possible to do them while looking in the score. But it's also very interesting with the tradition, because I mean, nowadays we play everything by memory, and I did it as well. But the thing is that back then in the 19th century, they played the serious music with a score and the lighter music without score. So probably it makes sense, just because if you see the text, even if you know it very well, if you see, it's just a different level of control, I think. And you can also allow yourself more freedom.
I can't agree more on this. But I have a excuse. I'm piano duo performer, so we often play from the scores. However, I believe that it's actually a good idea to look at the scores when you play. Do you remember what Anders Schiff said about manuscripts of Bach's music, which I totally agree. He explained why he would use a manuscript, because he said that in the modern scores printing, we are getting rid of little directions of the stems. So we can't really, in Bach's scores, it's clearly, if he make it more angled, that he wants it to go more forward. So it makes sense. Do you play from manuscripts as well?
Well, from manuscripts, rarely, but I do this work before, because I compare a lot of editions and manuscripts and first editions of the piece, and then I just note some things in the score that I use. But I totally agree. If we could, if we talk about romantic music, in this sense, there are also some things that we cannot really read from the printed score. For example, with Schubert, it's a big problem if we have a hairpin, if it's a hairpin, or if it's an accent, or in Beethoven scores, where exactly does it stays, or it's just very important work. And even more important is just, I think that we read the score nowadays quite differently than they meant it back then. For example, hairpin is also kind of a big topic for me. Apparently, the meaning of it was not only dynamic, crescendo, diminuendo, but it was also agogic. And there are some wonderful sources about it, but it's again a topic of its own to discuss.
Dmitry, is there anything you would like to wish to younger generations?
Well, first of all, I don't consider myself too old to make some wise advice to the younger generation. But just from my own experience, I would say that it's extremely important to live the life in order to transfer your experience to the keyboard and to the sounds. Maybe this. And also, this is something that is actually coming to my life with the age, is importance of exercising, of doing some fitness or Pilates or yoga or whatever. So
That's great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you here.
Yeah, me too, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.